manager for the city of Wooddale. What I thought I would like to do tonight to help you and to clarify some things is to walk through our process on how we go about recruiting for this position. Initially, I will be your primary consultant on this. There will be other people who will assist with references. I will be scheduling meetings with the council members and with whatever staff members that the council asks me to meet with. On occasion, in some cities, they also ask me to meet with the school superintendent, for example, or Chamber of Commerce people, just to get a feel for the community and what people may be looking for in qualities for a city manager. After we complete that part of it, I interview people to ask them about the challenges and opportunities that are going to be coming in the future for Wooddale in order to present that in a recruitment profile, which is prepared. I believe they sent you an example of the recruitment profiles that we have done for other cities and similar agencies in the past. That recruitment profile is our major tool that we send out to candidates both from our files and as part of our general recruitment, which is advertising in ICMA, Illinois Municipal League, whichever websites, and both print matter that we would place these ads in. A number of people now use our site where we list positions to decide whether they want to pursue the job. We also put the recruitment profile on our website so that people can review it that way. After that is developed, then we prepare our screening for the position. We send out notices to those candidates who we think may be a good fit for Wooddale and advertise again in the known journals where we feel people will be most responsive. After the recruitment, we process the coordination. We take care of all the resumes that come in. We review them. We do some preliminary background and reference work, and I will do phone interviews with probably 10 to 12 people that we will recommend in a book form to the council for further review. From the time we establish and get the recruitment profile printed, it usually takes 60 to 90 days for the remainder of the process. After we have compiled that booklet, I present those candidates to you, going over their strengths, weaknesses, and whatever information that we can obtain from them at that point and determine whether they would be somebody that would be worthy of further consideration. At the end of that session with the council, I would ask the council to come up with usually 5 candidates to come in for an interview with a 6th as an alternate. We also do additional references at that point: background check, criminal investigation check, driving record. We also check all degrees because that on occasion comes up if it can happen in Notre Dame, it can happen anywhere. They had a few problems with a coach a few years ago on record. So we do that even though someone has been in the field a number of years. At the end of, after we come up with the 5 or 6 people, we schedule interviews or any additional assessment tools that you choose to use. Sometimes cities would ask that an assessment center be established, sometimes a straight interview or some combination of the two. As part of we schedule the interviews and prepare sample questions based on the criteria that we've established, again, based on going back to those initial interviews with council and other members of the community that you deem appropriate. After that interview, sessions are usually held over a 1-day period with finalists, another 1 or 2 people asked to come back on a second day. That can be spread out over time, but we try to compact that primarily to save you money. If you have out-of-state people coming in for an interview, if we get them in on the 1 day for the interview, we keep them the next day. We don't have to fly them back in for a second interview. At the end of that time, we would assist with the final selection and preparation of and working with you as far as a contract or employment agreement. With many councils, they don't like to hear the word contract. They prefer employment agreement, but they're basically the same thing, as your attorney, I'm sure, will agree to. The whole process, again, takes 60 to 90 days from the time we get that recruitment profile. I would like to tell you where, since I would be the individual working on this, what I'm working on at the present time, so that you know I would be able to devote some efforts to this. I'm going to be completing the search for the city manager for the city of Des Plaines. Their interviews are next week. We will be finishing up with Sterling, Illinois. I'm assisting another consultant with that for city manager, and I'm doing a technical position, information technology director for the village of Palatine, but that will stretch out for another month or two. So a couple of them are dropping off, so it should be no problem for me to devote a considerable amount of time to assisting with this city manager search. Right now, we have a number of vacancies in the Chicago metropolitan area, and that usually begins the movement of one candidate to another municipality, kind of a, I guess, round robin, for lack of a better term. The good news with that is a number of good candidates will be in the field looking for the position, and we hope to attract them to Wooddale based, again, on information that we have and a professional search that will convince people that Wooddale would be a great place to come to work. With that, I'm open to any questions at this point. You have our contract, and I'm willing to answer any questions on that at this point in time. Thank you, Mayor.
I'll start. I noticed in the Des Plaines profile that residency was required. Some of us went to the IML presentation on this, and we were told, I'm old-fashioned, I like the residency requirement for the city manager, but we were told that we might limit our applicants by having such a requirement. Is that your experience?
Yes, it is our experience. Again, it depends on the size of the municipality. Des Plaines obviously is over 60,000 people and has a lot of variety of housing and is a pretty good-sized municipality. If you were looking at a smaller municipality, depending on where they are in the economic spectrum, I mean, to ask a city manager to take up residence in Glencoe might be a little difficult for them just because of the cost of housing there. But it does limit, especially if you have someone who's already in the Chicago metropolitan area and perhaps only lives a few miles away. Someone moving from outside the area, given the community of Wooddale, I would strongly encourage anyone, even if there wasn't a residency requirement, if you're coming from Ohio, Michigan, or Wisconsin and coming to take this job, I'm one of those people like yourself, Mayor, that believes they should be a resident of Wooddale. But it can limit, in answer to your question, yes, it can limit it to some extent. It depends on, I don't know if you have residency requirement in your code or not for the city manager.
To my knowledge, it's not in the code.
It's not in the code. What we sometimes do is put residency desirable or strongly recommended if it was not required.
Any comments, questions? Alderman Wesley?
I have one question. I did get your contract here. Are you trying to tell me that to do a search for city manager without paying for the candidates to come in, you're looking at, what are you looking at for price-wise here?
15.5.
15.5 to do everything, background checks, everything.
That's correct. Well, there's additional expenses up to $4,500. That would be a LexisNexis search. The advertisements are paid for outside of that $15,500. You bill directly to the city.
All right.
Alderman, please.
I have a question on the $800 per day consultant involved. Is that an extra charge or
Is that under the assessment center?
optional services, conduct of focus group, see step 1?
Oh, that would be if you decided to have a community focus group separate from what we would normally do. That's what that would be.
Okay.
That would not be anything I described tonight is not part of that $800 per day.
Alderman Shockey?
You mentioned you're working with 3 cities right now. Can you tell us how many community managers or administrators that the PAR group itself is working with at this point?
But our total number, not all of our searches are city manager. You would only want the city manager search. I think we're probably in the neighborhood of 6 or 7. We're doing Iowa City, Iowa, Park Ridge, Hawthorne Woods. Some of these are being filled and completed as we speak. So as one, active searches for city manager in Chicago area, probably half a dozen.
Thank you.
Alderman Wesley?
Mr. Mayor, maybe you can answer this question. Have we used a power group before?
We used it in the hiring of Mr. Townsend, and we may have used it for Mr. Cornel and for the salary survey of Mr. Williams.
Yes, we've used them at least 5 times.
Okay, my question to you is, what was the total bill on that one? Do we have any idea what it was for them before? With the candidates flying in and all that?
I believe for Mr. Townsend, it was approximately the same. I do not recall for Mr. Cornel.
I'm just, I just think there's some hidden expense in here that isn't added in this bill. That's what I'm questioning.
The 4,500 is maximum amount that we could charge you for additional expenses within that. And that would be, your expenses would not be that because I live in Arlington Heights. That 4,500 also covers my transportation, for example, if I was going to Columbus, Ohio, my flights and all that. So there's none of that going to be put in it. So we do, and we also do not bill Chicago clients for my mileage.
Alderman, please.
When we go through the process, the questions you're going to ask the candidates, are they questions that you have standard normal questions, or is that questions that some of the council members may have?
There's 2 steps, Alderman Police, where I would be talking to them. One would be the telephone interview that I do preliminary to that, and some of that is just, if it's someone we're not familiar with, basically to make sure they can put sentences together and what they've told me on their resume is true, and try to get a judgment as to their personality, how it would fit, that type of thing. The questions, if you're talking about the questions for the final interview with the board, some of those are pretty stock questions that probably any candidate could come up with. I tailor those questions based on the information and try to zero in. For example, if working with TIF districts or economic development is a primary thing, those questions I would hit harder in there. Again, those are sample questions. I try to do a library of probably a lot more questions than you would want to ask that day. So if we have 26 questions, you might say, Greg, there's really only 14 of them that we really want to ask, that we want to zero in. And there's nothing magical about those that that means that you couldn't add to those or change the questions. We try to ask the same questions to each candidate.
Alderman, please.
Well, I understand, I believe the police department does like a psychological analysis or testing.
Yes.
Do you guys do that as
We
well?
could do a Myers-Briggs test. That is an additional charge, and I believe that's outlined
That's
in
on
there.
here, yes.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Anything further? Thank you, Mr. Ford.
Thank
We'll
you.
get back to you. That brings us back to item 10 on the agenda, subparagraph B, planning health, or public health, safety, and judiciary. Alderman Coles.
No report.
Public Works, Alderman Winger.
No report.
Finance and Administration, Alderman Wesley. Community and Economic Development, Alderman Lewiton.
There's no report tonight.
We do not have any other business. We do not need an executive session. There are no items to be referred or items for information only. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.